Welcome everybody to the Upperclassmen Career Panel. I'm Jacki Banks. I'm the Arts, Media, and Communication Advisor here at Cawley. I'll be moderating. And I want to truly thank the representatives from each school, our student upperclassmen representatives, James, Claire, Ilsa, and Ryan, for being here today and talking us through their various career journeys, which for some of you, when you think of career journeys, you might think of something that's very linear and very point A to point B, when in actuality, career is quite a twisty turny road. And I think all of our panelists will talk about how twisty turny they actually are. So just a few housekeeping tools for those of us who are joining live. Keep yourself muted and video off unless you want to be seen by others who are recorded. Please, I invite you to ask all of your questions. I'm going to have all of the panelists talk about, you'll learn a little bit more about their majors, their minors, the student groups that they're active in, the other things that they're active in and around the university. So if anything seems interesting to you, please put it in the chat. I will monitor it and we'll ask as we go along. So folks, before I dive into the very first question, I want each of you to introduce yourselves, and I will just call you out as I see you on the screen. And I think we'll keep it to a pretty simple Georgetown 411, which is name and just your major and minor. And so we won't even go into student groups and everything yet. So let's just keep it pretty clean, and then I'll start asking my questions. It'll become kind of clear the other wonderful things that you do. So James.
Hi, everyone. My name is James, and I'm from Seattle, Washington. I'm a junior in the SFS studying international politics with a concentration in international security. I'm really excited to be here and even more excited to share some of the things I've learned along the way.
Thank you, James. Claire.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claire. I'm a junior in the NHS. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. I am studying healthcare management and policy on the management track, and I'm also minoring in economics, and also very excited to be here today.
Thank you, Claire. Ilsa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ilsa. I'm a senior in the college studying government and sociology and minoring in Spanish. I'm from Eugene, Oregon, and I'm so excited to be here.
And thank you, Ilsa and Ryan.
Hey, y'all, I'm Ryan. I'm from DC. I am a senior. The time has come. Second semester senior in the MSB, and I'm double majoring in marketing and management. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, everybody. And I didn't say talk about your geographic location where you're originally from. It's so neat to hear all of you from such various parts around the country. So welcome. All right, so I'm going to dive into our first question. Please feel free to run with it however you feel, and we don't have to go in any particular order here, just whoever wants to go first. So first question, what people or experiences inside and outside Georgetown have been impactful in regard to your career? So when I think of people, it could be anything from coaches, it could be faculty, it could be parents, it could be staff, it could be anyone you could think of. And then experiences, I'm thinking your major classes. It could be professors. It could be student groups. It could be study abroad. So really just the range of things in that sentence. I know it's quite lengthy, but so please feel free to maybe riff on that. So I have somebody that would like to go first.
I'm happy to start. I can talk about this all day. So I'll try to make the most sense in the quickest, most concise way possible. As far as people, and helpful way possible too. As far as people, for me, I would divide like the people who have been most helpful to me in 3 categories. The first one is just Georgetown related. The first 2 I'd say are Georgetown related. And it includes professors. I mean, I did a dual enrollment program for my junior and senior years of high school. And so I had exposure to college and university. I did it at GW, right down the street from us, being from DC. And so I had that exposure of college, academia, and I kind of knew what to expect in that regard coming into Georgetown. But one thing that I absolutely did not do in high school or, my college experience was go to office hours and can make a connection with my professors. I only did that when I needed help. And when I got to Georgetown, I realized just how impactful office hours can be, just to go and get to know the professors that you're working with. And so when I think of people, I immediately in the MSB think of Jimmy Lynn as someone who's been very impactful for me as a student interested in the marketing and entertainment and sports entertainment world. So professors are one. Number two, I'd say, is the Career Center, for sure. Both Cawley, I mean, Jacki has been an angel to me. I tell her this all the time. The Career Center has been very helpful for me, from just exploration to the programming and going to events. And as an underclassman, not even knowing exactly what part of entertainment I wanted to go into, Cawley helped me figure that out. And then the MSB Career Center as well. I'm actually a peer career advisor now, so that's pretty helpful if I do say so myself. And then lastly, for people, I would say I joined a few professional organizations as an undergrad. One of them is called MLT, Management Leadership for Tomorrow. If you're interested in business careers and you self-identify as a minority, it's a great organization. SEO is another one that's similar to MLT. But I'd say my professors, the Career Center, and joining professional organizations in the industry that I wanted to work in were definitely very helpful for me.
Thanks, Ryan.
I can go next. So I think I would echo Ryan's point first and foremost with professors. I would say even personally, I did not, even in my time at Georgetown, realize this until about halfway through. And I feel like I am still amazed as how these professors that I made connections with, sophomore, junior year are helping me now with trying to find a job. So I started out thinking I wanted to do sociology and was trying to figure out what I was going to do with it, and started to take some government classes for fun. And some of those professors have now, just from going and asking them questions in office hours, they are now, reaching out to people for jobs for me. Some of them even have like alum email chains for all of us who have taken their class. So they'll send out emails with job opportunities and stuff. Professor Schlickenmeyer is particularly the professor who does that. He teaches contemporary U.S. foreign policy and IR, so I highly recommend him. And I think beyond that, the Career Center, in terms of writing my first cover letter, helping me with my resume, I had no clue what I was doing going into this. And I think also just helping me understand that all the experiences I have are really relevant to getting an internship, even if I don't have any internship experience to begin with. And so coming into Georgetown feeling really overwhelmed by people around me who in my head seemed like they had all this experience, I felt like I was really able to go in and talk through like volunteer experiences and all these other things that are truly valuable to figuring out my way through all of this career stuff. And then experiences, I mean, I'm also a part of a women in leadership club, GUIL, which I had a mentor in my freshman and sophomore year who really helped me, even just with registering for classes. So I think there are so many clubs and organizations on campus that are open membership, provide great mentorship. And I would really, any of those, I would really recommend reaching out to and being a part of that. And I think also just with classes, in terms of experiences, I unfortunately wasn't able to study abroad, but I do feel like I was able to try quite a few different subjects, especially my freshman year, because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And while, I figured out I didn't want to do econ through trying it out, I do feel like, trying out different classes, especially ones that are cross-listed, maybe, that's one of my biggest tips, actually. A side note is that, you look on the government classes, for example, and you think that that's all that counts towards your government major, but looking at what's cross-listed for stuff that you've already decided that you're going to do opens up, classes in the AFAM department, all these different things that you might not realize actually count towards your major. So, yeah.
Thanks, Elsa.
I can go next. So I'd have to, kind of along the similar lines, first of all, the Cawley Career Center was absolutely very impactful to kind of my experience, as I'm sure I'll talk on later. I've kind of like switched courses, switched directions during my time at Georgetown. So having the Cawley Career Center to kind of just help me with resume, help me with the kind of just what direction I want to go to, especially kind of during that first internship search that I had, was very helpful and very meaningful in my experience. And then also kind of, as both of them mentioned, the professors and classes. Again, I can't iterate enough how important it is to go to office hours and to make connections with your professors. And I think one that stood out to me was kind of in this time period, which was like my sophomore winter, where I was kind of in that time switching directions, not really sure exactly what I wanted to do. And I ended up adding a class kind of during the add drop period for the spring semester. It was healthcare management consulting class. And so it was kind of something that wasn't required for my major. So it was just an elective, and I wasn't quite sure it was something I wanted to do, consulting. But I knew I loved the healthcare. So I threw myself into the class. It turned out to be a class. It was for undergraduate students, but then also graduate students could take it. So it's a very small class, and there were a lot of graduate students there that I was just not expecting. So it was a little bit overwhelming at first, but I made an incredible connection with the professor, Dr. Ryon Henderson, who has been a mentor, kind of really helped me gain exposure to the consulting world, both healthcare and non-healthcare, and kind of his guidance and his exposure and teachings really helped me kind of decide that that's something I want to do. So he was both just an incredible professor, amazing person to get to know, and also someone who's kind of been a mentor, helping me decide what I want to do with my future and with my summers and whatnot. So again, the professor connections are incredible and definitely need to be taken advantage of. And then also kind of along more of that formalized internship side, something I didn't really know until this past summer and never really thought about, but I had an internship this past summer, incredible experience, absolutely loved it. And I had a great mentor there. And I think keeping in touch with people from your past internships is extremely important. And I was just actually on the phone and emailing with my boss the other week. And the internship ended like August 10th, but I think just continuing to keep in touch and keeping those relationships, even if you're not going to go back to that firm or kind of even be in that field, I think it's always nice to have a mentor who has seen your work, you've gotten to know in a different industry, or just provides a different point of view to your experience and education. And then finally, I would say student groups on campus. I'm a part of the Georgetown University Student Investment Fund, which is GUSIF. And I am one of the few NHS students in that club. So at first I was very kind of overwhelmed by all the MSB, both people and kind of the tech terminology that I did not know coming from kind of the healthcare side of things. But that has been an incredible experience. I've met the most amazing people in that club. And I think it's kind of being in a pre-professional club like that, especially at Georgetown, it does seem very overwhelming, especially with all the application and interview processes. But these are people that I've kind of spent the past 2 years with. I've worked alongside them professionally, and they've also become some of my closest friends. So having a group of people that really can push you in that professional setting, but then also know you as a friend definitely helps to kind of shape your Georgetown experience. And for me, it's been just an incredible addition to my time at Georgetown.
Thanks, Claire. And I'll come back to that. You were talking about changing directions. And so I think that's a theme that we might come back to as a panel at some point. But James, finally over to you.
So I transferred in my sophomore year, and actually the Career Center was one of my first major points of contact. And that was well before I had any internships or outside Georgetown experiences. So the Career Center has really been a pivotal part before, during, and after all and any experiences. So again, stressing that, one of the key parts of that is like shaping your narrative with Beth Schill. She is the loveliest person. And just kind of being this constructive springboard. It seems daunting, like, oh, I'm going to go to this Career Center advisor. But they really are there to help you. Another major help for me has been practitioners, specifically when they're professors. who work in DC during the day and then in Georgetown in the evenings, and kind of taking advantage of Georgetown's really unrivaled location, as well as that extensive network has been a goal of mine. And I only have wonderful things to say about reaching out to fellow Hoyas. I've had the privilege to be in classes with former ambassadors and World Bank economists, and national security specialists. And to Ryan and Ilsa's point on office hours, this is where you can speak about the nuances of, what is the mental health toll? What is, the power dynamics and the lifestyle adjustments you need? Of course, they can speak on kind of the intellectual and content side. But, like college, you want to find a career that's a good fit, and that involves both the professional and the personal side. I'm also at Georgetown. I'm involved in the academic council on the communications committee. And one of the strengths of that has been kind of this tight-knit group where you get to professionally advance the school, as well as personally interact with your fellow Hoyas in the process. And being able to liaison between the school and the student body has been a major way for me as transfer to get involved.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for sharing. So some great nuggets in there, and I'm sure we're going to come back to a lot of those later. But I want to move on to our second question. And I feel like this will resonate with a lot of folks, but did you ever feel lost or unsure about what you wanted to do? I feel like I could say, yes, I have felt this way many times. And have you ever changed directions? So I'm thinking, Claire, you definitely talked about like you did your change direction. So I would love for you to kind of reflect on feeling lost, feeling unsure. How did you, what did you do with it? What steps did you take? If you changed directions, changed majors. I think students would love to hear about that, because I know choosing a major or then maybe transitioning to a new major can be a very stressful process. So if anyone would like to start us off, I'd be.
Yes, I can kick us off here.
Right.
So I would like to say that but I would think my transition or kind of change of direction is a little bit of a cliche one, but it still has been an incredible experience along the way. So I think starting off applying to a school like Georgetown, where you do apply into, at least in the NHS, but you apply into the school. So you kind of, whether it's NHS, MSB, college, whatever it is, you do kind of set yourself up in high school kind of to like what path that you're going to do. And so for me, as a junior in high school, I decided that I was going to apply to my college's pre-med. And so I did that. I applied to Georgetown pre-med and then healthcare management and policy as my major. And so I did the pre-med extracurriculars. I took 2 years worth of pre-med requirements here along with my major. But at the halfway through my second year, I realized that it is just not something I wanted to do. And if any of you are pre-med, you know that the commitment needs to be about 500% for the next many, many years. And so if it's not something that like you're extremely in love with, or just you ever get that feeling of doubt, is kind of when you just want to think, and you don't need to drop it right away, but for me, I wanted to kind of reach outside of the pre-med world and gain some more experiences. And so I was still pre-med my sophomore year at Georgetown, but that is when I decided that I wanted to kind of gain a new skill that I wasn't receiving in the classroom and in my science courses. So that's when I applied to GUSIF within the healthcare industry. So I realized there I would be able to continue my work with healthcare, but also gain more exposure and more finance and business education that I was not receiving in the classroom, just because I absolutely love my major of healthcare management and kind of that intersection between both healthcare and business. And so I think for me, the important thing was kind of just exploring other options and other fields and really getting outside of your comfort zone. And even though I had absolutely no financial or business knowledge whatsoever, throwing myself into that kind of opened me up to a whole new world and realized that is something I was extremely interested in. And so at that point, I kind of reevaluated what I wanted to do. And I talked to like as many people as possible about being pre-med, about not being pre-med, if they've ever changed directions. And there are so many people out there that have either added pre-med or dropped pre-med along their kind of process in college. And so talking to those people, I realized that I was more interested in kind of the business side of healthcare. And so I kept my major here. So I was continued to be healthcare management, but I dropped the pre-med halfway through my sophomore year, and I added an economics minor. So there I was able to, again, get some more business experience, continue working in healthcare, volunteering in healthcare, but also gaining more knowledge in the business side of things. And so adding those kind of classes and club experiences away from your traditional or trajectory was extremely important to me. And as I think back on it now, I was a junior in high school deciding my next 10 years. And that's okay that you didn't continue with that. You certainly do not need to continue with that. And I think it's never too late to kind of make that change or make that decision. I remember my winter break of my sophomore year when I was debating it, and I was talking to Jody kind of about what I wanted to do. I was like, there was a part of my mind that was like, I signed up for this. Like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep doing it. And I always kind of had that mentality, but if you're not in love with it, there's absolutely no need to kind of force that upon yourself. And so being able to change directions, having mentors at Georgetown that allowed that kind of transition to be not necessarily easy, but kind of a transition that was not overwhelming at all. It was a process, but it was one that I was extremely happy that I did. And to this day, I am just very excited kind of about where I'm going and what I'm going to be doing in the future. And so I think just taking that time to reflect and see and gain experiences outside in as many different fields as possible is one of the biggest pieces of advice that I could give.
Well, Claire, I love that. The idea that, just because you start with one thing doesn't mean you have to end there, and to kind of give yourself the permission to change directions. I love that reflection. Thank you. James, Ilsa, Ryan?
Yeah, I'd love to go.
Okay, James.
Yes. So when I was a sophomore, I wished more than anything to know exactly what I could or would achieve. But being unsure can mean leaving lots of doors and opportunities and options open. And college is the place for you to find and refine those passions and interests. And so having it all nicely tied up in a bow is this huge misconception. And part of my narrative has been internships. And, part of that is being able to market yourself, but also part of it is exploration. And whether it's the entire industry or just the position you're in, it's about seeing what you like, maybe what's a challenge that you have to tackle, what's a challenge that is a bit outside your scope, or even what you want to steer away from entirely. And so whatever the experience, you'll hone that direction. Over the summer, I worked for FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And here I was at the time, an international politics major, focusing on international law, institutions, and ethics, working for a domestic-based natural disaster emergency response organization. And even my supervisors are like, "Oh, that's an odd combination." But I came out with the most marketable skills to date. And, it's all about how you tell your story. And the Career Center was actually really awesome in helping me shape this. Because at FEMA, we developed measures to enhance readiness. And, in defense and national security circles, that's the buzzword. Our efforts in disaster zones, mimicked humanitarian crises abroad. And, leveraging intergovernmental resources is not too unlike joint and multilateral operations when it comes to the military. So to think that a good experience, just because it's not perfectly aligned with your major, is a trivial concern. I've had employers say, "Wow, this opportunity sounds so unique. You're an international security major, but you had an experience in this. Tell me about it." And so having those risks and being open-minded sets you apart. And it's part of that whole experimentation phase.
I love that, James. I'm hearing flexibility, versatility, be excited about the possibilities. So try not to limit yourself. Love it. Ilsa, Ryan?
I can just briefly echo that because I think for me as well, I felt I didn't really know in Georgetown coming in what I wanted to do. And starting with sociology, which I loved, but wanted to add something with that. ended up being government, but the government major, as many others, can lead to so many different paths career-wise. And there's even so many different paths in terms of class choices within that major that you can concentrate in. And I felt really overwhelmed about it because I really didn't know much about it, but I started it. And then I would say that what really honed my skills and focus was exploring different things through internships. Excuse me. So, I mean, that started out, I feel like I've done internships all over the place. And one of those was because of the first summer when COVID started and me being like, no, I don't have something. This is scary. And I actually, through the Career Center, there were these online internships that they created, which I believe might still be going on, connecting you with Georgetown alum. And so I jumped into doing a creative consultancy, which has nothing to do with what I thought I was interested in. And so I've done that in marketing. And then I've also, done the classic Hill internship, but it was actually through word of mouth, through friends at Georgetown, that I became aware of an internship that I've continued to work in, which is in global health. And in my government major, I would not have found that area of a career with any of the choices of classes that I have taken thus far. So it wasn't until I found this internship, not through the online, it was totally through word of mouth. And I think for me, my career path has really been more defined by my outside experiences and trying out different things that may not have on the surface anything to do with what you're studying. But I think, as James also mentioned, the Career Center has really helped me also be able to frame the skills that may on the surface not seem like they have to do with what you're interested in, because they really do. And even my different volunteering experiences, I feel like have contributed to conversations that have led to different opportunities. So I think definitely don't feel like, especially within the government area, you have to go get that State Department internship. I feel like everyone, at least for me, was talking about freshman, sophomore year. That's also great, but there's so many other things out there. And part of that is through word of mouth and talking to professors and friends. And I think my last thing would be, some internships aren't even listed. I think reaching out to places that maybe they're not big enough to list an internship and pay the student, but there are different there's different ways on campus that you can apply for funding if it's not paid. So I think really just put your foot in the door wherever you can. Don't judge an opportunity too much on the surface. I think talking to people, sorry, I'm rambling, but I'm really passionate about trying different things outside of school, because you never really know where it will lead you.
Thanks, Ilsa. It's funny, as you were saying that, the talking to people, it's the dreaded networking word, but really networking is about just building relationships. That's what it is. And so it sounds like that a lot of the chances that came to you by, it seems like happenstance, were really through your network and talking to people and being open. So thank you for that reflection. Ryan, anything lost on shore, changing directions?
Yeah, I had a few bursts of being indecisive, that's for sure. The one thing I wanted to add that Ilsa just mentioned, that I just needed to underscore, because I didn't mention it in my people conversation, was about alumni. Because I mentioned I want to work in media and entertainment. I'm from DC. I'm not from LA. I'm not from New York. For generations, my family has been in DC. So I in no way knew anyone in the entertainment industry. I had no idea how I was going to get there. But I'm happy to say I've made it. And speaking with Georgetown alumni was a huge reason why I've gotten where I've gotten today. And so, yeah, I was pretty indecisive in different ways. So I was one of the students who knew what they wanted to study when they got to Georgetown. I knew that I wanted to study marketing. One, I thought that was going to be my only major. I'll get into what ended up happening, but I knew I wanted to study marketing, and I knew I either wanted to do marketing in the fashion and retail industry or media and entertainment industry. And so I've in a roundabout way, ended up where I am today. I'll walk y'all through that journey. So starting with the academic side, my freshman year, I thought I was going to go to NYU, actually. That was the school that I was pretty much decided on. And then Georgetown was the last school I heard back from. I got invited to this thing called Gap Weekend. And I was like, I don't want to stay in DC, but let me just give this school on a hilltop that I never thought I'd go to a shot, and let me go to Gap Weekend. So I came, fell in love with the school, decided to stay. My family was very happy, probably happier than me. And I figured, you know, if I have to stay at this school that's so well known for consulting and finance and government, then at least let me make my own major. So I literally tried to craft my own major within the marketing department. And it was going to be the business of media and entertainment, which is what I was going to study at NYU. And so I created this whole report, and I knew somebody, a senior who was graduating, that had done it too. So I was like, I'm just going to take his report and I'm going to submit it to my dean, and boom, I'll be good. Well, I ended up dropping that because I found out about the film and media studies minor, and it had just opened up to MSB students my sophomore year. So I said, okay, let me get rid of this report. I'll just try that. I tried the film and media studies minor out. I spoke to Sky, you know, the director of the program and everything. And then I found out about the journalism minor. And I was like, I think I want to do journalism instead. So then I tried that out, and I took a journalism class. And long story short, I didn't declare either one of those minors. By my junior year, I declared African American studies as my minor. I ended up dropping that before my senior year because I had all the credits, but I didn't want to take the senior capstone class. So I was like, I'm just going to drop it. And then my sophomore year, I picked up my second major, which was management. So today I'm happy to announce I'm a marketing and management double major with no minor. So I say that to say, even when you know what you want to do, you don't know how it's going to happen. You might not know specifically what job you want to work in within that field. And I think speaking with alumni and taking all these different classes and exploring, like the other panelists mentioned, will help you get there for sure. And then the second thing that I want to make sure I mention, aside from academics, is professionally, I wanted to do an internship my freshman year because, like everyone else, I thought the summer after your freshman year, you just have to do an internship. Like, we're at Georgetown, that's what everyone is doing. I'm here to dispel that myth that it's not what everyone is doing, and you do not have to do that. I ended up studying abroad this summer after my freshman year. I went to Barcelona. It was the best summer of my life. To this day, it's the best summer of my life that I've ever had. And I'm really grateful for the experience. The summer after my sophomore year, I ended up interning at Nickelodeon. Never thought I'd work at Nickelodeon, but I was like, I grew up on this network, it wasn't exactly the role that I wanted. So I was a digital programming intern. I'm not gonna bore y'all with the details on what that meant, but I wanted to be a marketing intern, and that position wasn't available because, I was later in the recruiting process. But they said, this is what we have. And Nickelodeon is owned by Viacom CBS, for those who don't know, which is a huge media conglomerate. They own BET, MTV, VH1, Paramount. So I said, even if it's not the role exactly that I want, being in that organization speaks, volumes, and I can connect with people at other networks and different roles. So I did that this summer after my sophomore year. And then the summer after my junior year, that led me to work at Google. And so Google, when you think of Google, it's a tech company. I said I wanted to work in media and entertainment. You're probably thinking, like, what's the connection? But I realized that Nickelodeon, what I wanted next and what I absolutely did not want next. And so for those who are interested in entertainment, unfortunately, the reality is the jobs don't pay that well. Entry-level internships, if compensation is really important to you, then entertainment entry-level will probably not provide that for you. But I decided that I still wanted to work in entertainment, but I wanted to work on the cutting edge of media and entertainment and, at a more innovative company. So I set my sights on a streaming service, and I said, I want to work at the intersection of tech and entertainment. I got that Google internship, ended up working at Android. It has absolutely nothing to do with media and entertainment, again. But because I was so persistent, I found my way to YouTube Music throughout the summer. And so I had 2 project teams this previous summer, and I worked for both YouTube Music and Android. And now I'm going back to Google full-time to work at YouTube Music. So I say all that to say, things are going to change. You may come into Georgetown knowing what you want to do, like I did. I thought I knew what I wanted to do. but you kind of just don't know all the opportunities that exist within that industry. And so I just want to encourage everyone to be open, be flexible, even if you think you know what you want to do. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And if you see me moving up the stairs, I feel as though that the dog is going to start barking. So I want to make sure that it's all about flexibility in this environment, isn't it? We gotta go where we gotta go. All right. So everyone, I'm getting to the third of our questions, and I'm going to ask that. But I encourage anyone who is with us live to put your questions in the chat, and we can get to that. Okay, so third question: what is your general advice for freshmen and sophomores interested in the industries and/or the job functions you have pursued? So, Ryan, you were talking about alumni. You really wanted to hit that home. So, I think, I think for each industry or for the various job functions and for some of you, you might have industries that you love, and you may not be sure of the exact job functions you want to do, which is totally fine. So I suppose my question for the panel is, what is that general advice, whether it's just broadly for the industry that you're looking at, or if it's for a job function that you are interested in. So anything that you feel in that area. We have someone who'd like to start.
I can start just because I think mine is going to be quicker than the other ones, because marketing, or in general, I can speak to tech, entertainment, and careers in media or advertising. I think that recruiting timeline is a bit later than finance or specifically business-related careers. It's later than finance, it's later than consulting, it's later than investment banking. And so a lot of students may get a bit intimidated by the fact that they're seeing their friends get their internship offers and their job offers earlier in the year, and they're just not sure how to break into that industry. One, because it is later, and two, because a lot of the recruitment processes for these organizations, they're just not that formal. They're not as formal as those other industries I mentioned. And so what I would say, if you're interested in a career in tech, media, or entertainment, networking is huge. Again, I cannot underscore that. Surprisingly, there are a lot of Georgetown alum in entertainment, which I didn't know. Jackie helped me figure that out. I'm actually planning on going on the GMA career trek. If you're not familiar with GMA and you're interested in careers in entertainment, definitely get familiar with it. I'll type in the acronym and everything in the chat when I'm finished talking. But GMA is a great organization to be involved in as far as alumni networking. And then I would just say, reaching out to people on LinkedIn. I cannot stress how many times I've cold called people on LinkedIn, and it's worked out for me. And so really, when it comes to tech, when it comes to entertainment, doing the exploration programs that they have for underclassmen, specifically for freshmen and sophomores, and then getting to know people who work in that organization are probably the two best things you can do. And the third thing, if you're a student who self-identifies as a minority student, there are great professional organizations specific to tech, media, and entertainment that you can apply to, and they'll just fast track your application in the recruiting process. So if y'all have any questions on any of that I just mentioned, feel free to type them in the chat and we can hit them later, or you can, email me, find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ryan. And there is a question coming up for you, but probably for all the panelists as well. So again, guys, you have questions, keep them coming, and I will ask after everyone goes this round. So yeah, general advice for your areas that you think you might want to go into or job functions you want to do.
I can go next. I think, to reiterate, using the Georgetown Alum Network is a huge asset that you have just at the push of an email send button. And it's extremely, extremely useful. And I think the whole networking idea is extremely intimidating. At least it was for me. But it's one of the most useful things that you can do, especially if you are unsure of exactly what you want to do, or you are sure. It's just having those conversations with people at different firms to learn about their experiences, kind of also their past in undergrad and grad school and whatnot, and other firms that they've worked out. Learning from those kind of conversations can help to shape what you're interested in and what kind of roles and firms within the industry kind of help or match to what you're interested in. And so I think starting off, you can cold email people. And I think that's something that you definitely should do, whether it's emailing a Georgetown alum or reaching them out to them on LinkedIn. And I'm working an internship right now at a health policy consulting firm in DC. And I reached out to the woman on LinkedIn about a year ago a year ago, asking for a summer internship. And I never heard back from her. And that's usually what happens, and that's the reality of things. That's okay. You move on. And then she reached back out to me at the end of the summer, and she's like, "Hey, Claire, I loved your message. Sorry I didn't respond earlier, but we actually have an opening now. Like, I'd love to talk to you." Ended up getting an interview, and I've been working for them since August, and it's been an incredible experience. So just kind of little things like that, and kind of just putting those messages out, or you never know kind of which way it's going to go. And then also, I think for me, kind of more of that on the healthcare management side of things, kind of it is that intersection between healthcare and business. But I think one of the things that set me apart from other people this last summer is kind of what I spoke to earlier, is pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and doing something different. And so this past summer, I worked at Oak Tree Capital, which is a strictly finance firm, not an ounce of healthcare in there. But I applied to them because I was just interested in gaining more experience in the business world, and kind of getting more hands-on real experience and education. And so I applied to them as a healthcare management major among probably like 50 to 100 people that were majoring in finance. And so the first question I got in all of my interviews were, why is a healthcare management person coming to interview at this firm? And so I think, one, it really set me apart because my interviewers were intrigued that I was doing something very different and kind of like pushing myself outside of the comfort zone and wanting to learn something new. And I think that is what ultimately set me apart, because you learn to kind of like shape your story and kind of how you provide a specific or unique point of view to whatever experience you're going to do. And each student, regardless of your background, regardless of your major, your experiences like speak volume to what you're capable of doing at a firm, even if you don't have those hard technical skills. And so I ultimately ended up working this entire past summer at a finance firm. Loved it. That now it's not what I'm going to continue to do, but it has been kind of being able to speak on that experiences for my interviews for my upcoming summer for more of a healthcare consulting firm. It has been an incredible kind of just story and path that I like to really kind of tell the people who are interviewing me and kind of people I'm networking with, because I think something that sets you apart from other people and other applicants is very useful and kind of makes things exciting, honestly. So just really pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, getting something new experiences.
Thanks, Claire. Ilsa, James, any James?
Yeah, so my workplaces have been pretty much in government, Congress, FEMA, and currently I'm at the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And my best word of advice is, especially for government, is to just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. It's government, and their turnaround time is definitely not their forte. And I mean, Elsa, feel free to chime in because you've had government experience as well, some amazing opportunities. But just putting your best forward, because you never know what you're going to get. I have applications that I can see in the portal that they haven't even looked at for a year or 2 years. And maybe I'll get a message a year from now. But you'd be surprised about how many organizations that you feel like you can fit with. There's so many subdivisions of subdivisions of subdivisions. At FEMA, there was an Office of International Affairs. And so don't ever feel like, you have to pursue one path. I know we were talking about that earlier. Another big tip is the professors and the deans and the career center advisors, they're all here to help you. Don't ever feel like you're a burden, because the kind of throw it at the wall and see what sticks, it requires like so many different cover letters and so many different recommendations. And whether it's, financial need or a cover letter review or connection to an agency, it doesn't hurt to reach out. And so being proactive, of course, giving them notice, but don't let that kind of hesitancy be an obstacle.
Yeah, I would entirely echo that. Just really quickly, I think we've both had a lot of government experience. Particularly, like you had mentioned before, James, a lot of the professors, especially adjuncts, have their day jobs that are extremely relevant to a lot of things we are interested in. And I'm sure that's the same for many different majors. And I found they have been extremely helpful with connections, and they all want to help. And sometimes I know some professors have been like, they like offer to their entire class, like they really do truly want to help us. And I think with the government, like you said, setting out a lot of applications, doing research into different agencies and departments, like you said, because I had been like, okay, I'm interested in international affairs. Where can this lead me? And, you know, there's stuff on the Hill, there's stuff in all these different organizations. And it was through a friend that had an experience in the Office of Global Affairs at the Department of Health and Human Services. And I'd originally, before I had known more about this, just been like, okay, the State Department, the Hill, USA, I didn't really know where else to look. And this very small team within this smaller department at Health and Human Services has been where I've ended up interning for almost a year now. And you know, I've really enjoyed being on a really small team, feeling like I've been given a lot of responsibility. So I think looking into departments that maybe on the surface might not be in, say, international affairs, if that's what you're interested in. I mean, and as James talked about his experience, not everything needs to be in its name what you're interested in. So I think with that, yeah, and then reaching out to people, and some of, you know, a lot of it is through USA jobs, but for example, the Office of Global Affairs where I am now, their applications are just through their website. So truly reading through all these websites, you just send an email with your stuff for them. So it's really kind of not the most well organized. I think it's really hard to navigate, and creating a final resume and all of that, the Career Center has been really helpful with, because coming into this, it was really daunting. So yeah, I would just say use the connections with professors. It's pretty amazing the professors we're so lucky to have, particularly within this field. I'm still, I would say, like in shock that go here and that I get to have these amazing professors. And I'm really, really sad that I'm a senior. So yeah.
Thank you guys so much. You know, you really normalize just what a unique experience applying for internships and jobs across the industries, where I think there's a feeling among students that it's a very structured process. Everything is a very structured process. You start here, you end here. And as all of you have attested, it's not quite so simple. So it's very industry dependent. And I will say, maybe for some industries, yes, it's very structured and it does go A, B, C, D. But for other industries, there's not a simple answer. So thank you so much. So we got a question in. Ryon, it was primarily for you, but also open to everyone on the panel as well. How can we develop relationships with faculty through office hours? Also, how do we learn about professional organizations that exist for us to join? So I do love this question. You all have touched on office hours. So even though it's directed to you, Ryon, I'd love for you to hear your thoughts, but I would love all of you, if you can, just kind of maybe reflect on that. And if you need to look at it, guys, it is, I believe, it may not be in the chat, but I like it so much, I'm going to just put it in the chat so you can kind of keep an eye on it. And maybe if all of you have thoughts on it, you can give feedback after Ryon.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I'm a pretty open book, and I'm so glad you asked that question about the second half of your question about professional organizations, because I would literally type all the ones that I know related to business and marketing in the chat. I don't know if there is a guide that I went to tell me all of these different organizations for the MSB or for these business careers specifically. Cap Fair is this Sunday. I'm not sure. So that part, I'll get back to you, but I will just list the ones that I know in the chat. As far as the first part of your question, office hours, personally, if I was in a class, and by the way, I'm not recommending that you go to every single professor, every single class's office hours. If you want to, great. That's not my ministry. That is not what I did. I went specifically to the office hours of the professors that I enjoyed. because I enjoyed the content of their classes or that were relevant to what I wanted to do, long term. So what I would do, most of the time, I wouldn't even discuss like class assignments or anything like that. Our professors, especially if they're tenured, they're not just teaching, they're researching as well. So a great way to get your professor like interested in talking about themselves and talking for forever is to ask them like what their research is about. Or a lot of the times I would ask a marketing professor, hey, I'm thinking about working at an advertising agency, but I also want to work at a brand like Nike. So what are your opinions as a professor in the discipline about working for an agency versus working on the brand side? So I think just coming in open-ended and wanting to learn about them just as much as you want them to learn about you is a great step. And then secondly, you don't have to just talk about your class assignments, as I mentioned. I think I would come in prepared to ask them genuine professional career development questions that you're having. And I would think if they're a professor at Georgetown, then 9 times, 10 times out of 10, they'll be receptive to it.
Definitely agree that you don't need to ask them about class things. I think most of my productive conversations with professors have been me literally just asking them, hey, do you have time to talk about, how you got to where you are today? And I'm slightly interested in these different fields, and I had one professor just hop on an hour-long phone call and tell me his entire career path. And he ended up being the comptroller of the Air Force. Like he's like the amazing connections you have. And you really, like Ryan said, you don't need to ask them about class stuff. If that's like, I would say, don't like come up with a fake question about class stuff if you're really there to talk about career and life and stuff. So, I mean, there really is no need to.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, tell them or they won't know, right? They aren't mind readers. So if you, come in with like what you actually genuinely have questions about, like as Elsa said, if you have a question about career, if you have a question about academics, if you have a question about just how do they balance the career and academics, I mean, that's always a big question for me when it comes to someone who's working at Georgetown and in DC. I had an interesting experience waiting for my security clearance, and part of that was telling the career advisor that like I'm having some issues with the security clearance, and she was awesome and she reached out to my employer. And so having these people advocate for you, you got to tell them though what you need done. In a great place like Georgetown, they're always willing to help you out.
Yes, and office hours to me always felt like somewhat daunting, which they never should be, and they never end up being. But I feel like once you start to go to office hours and kind of really start to make those connections with your professors, you realize just how valuable that is. And kind of like what Ryan said, how you don't have to go to every single office hours for every single class, but finding something that you are interested in and just want to kind of learn more, whether like everyone said, whether it's about the professor's experiences or about the class content, kind of anything along those lines. Like they want to get to know you also. And I like they love people, students coming to their office hours. And I've had multiple comments from professors where it's just like, I'm so sad no one came to my office hours all last week. So they want to get to know you and kind of hear from you also. And so it just helps like to make those relationships. And I think for me, a lot of my professors recently, especially within my classes in my major, are all adjunct professors. And so they're all doing their day jobs that are something that like I am interested in. And so being able to kind of learn from them, it's also like networking. And honestly, in a more comfortable environment, because you're seeing these professors every single week and they're getting to know you, but you're also able to learn from their experiences. And so that's been a huge thing for me, just kind of learning about their career path, what they're doing every single day outside of school, and kind of what has led them to where they are today. And they will speak on behalf of you, and they will, if you want to put in the effort and make the relationships, they'll become a mentor and someone who will become a recommendation or anything along those lines. And so I think they're extremely worthwhile. It's just, I think the hardest part is just getting yourself there. But once you're there, it's extremely, extremely valuable.
By the way, if I can add really quickly, Jacki, for students, if you are hesitant about going to office hours, I promise you, a time will come, especially if you're interested in careers in business, where you need a letter of recommendation. And if you haven't gone to office hours, then you're going to regret it, because then you're going to be looking like, I don't know where to get it from. So tactically, it's just a great strategy to go there, but also personally, like we've all said, you'll develop some great relationships too.
And if I could just say one more thing, I think an important part of that is also like staying in touch after you leave the class, right? Like I know professors that love when I just give them like a 1-paragraph blurb about like, oh, I've been able to apply these concepts in your class, or I've been able to apply these lessons you've taught me in office hours, a semester, 2 semesters ago. Here's what I've done with it. And then can you write me a letter of recommendation, right? Like they love to hear these check-ins because they want to see where the students are going post-class, and they want to still stay in touch.
Thank you all so much. As we're coming down to the end, I mean, it's funny, as we get to the end, it's like you get started and you start thinking like, oh, and this and this and this. So we could have gone on for another half hour. So the typical resource person that I am, I did plunk in. It's kind of an unwieldy list, but it's campus groups, like a list of campus groups. It's I think the virtual cab fair is much better. And here, ever the resource person, I'm trying to Google really quick with the virtual cab fair. It sounds like it's on Saturday. Ilsa, very quickly, do you have any more knowledge?
I just know one of my club, GU Women in Leadership, is on Sunday, so I'm not positive about the rest of them. But
mine is on Sunday too, for the Black Side, the media org. So not sure if they're all on Sunday, but the media ones are Sunday too.
It sounds like you might go to the Center for Student Engagement, maybe that website and that will give you some information about that. So, and that's a great point for first, second year students and transfer students, where you might be still trying to think about like all the mini groups. The virtual cab fair, it's in person. Other years, it would be amazing for all of you to kind of check out. So just very quickly, because I'm very conscious of time and want to get everybody back to where they need to be, and so you can have lunch. I want to thank you, James, Claire, Ilsa, and Ryan, for joining today and all the wonderful advice. You guys are great. I didn't know you were going to do so fabulous. Shout outs to the Career Center. So also thank you. If the 4 of you could hold just a brief moment, and then everyone else who is here, thank you for joining. I'm going to end recording.